Hello, good evening, and welcome back. So, they can't make their minds up. COVID Christmas rules. Boris Johnson calls for shorter, smaller celebrations. Has the law been changed? No, it hasn't. It's still 23rd through 27th of December that you got your 3 Christmas households, your Christmas bauble, if you will, except in Wales, where it's 2, and a person who is living alone. So as long as your third household is a single occupier, then that's fine. That is the official law. But instead he's saying that you should keep your celebrations short and small to reduce the risk of spreading COVID over the festive period. And that restrictions will still be relaxed between 23rd and 27th of December, but the PM said people should think hard before meeting friends and family. That you know what the issues are, you know who is most at risk, and so if you can avoid overnight stays, then please do so. Is there concern that the NHS will be overwhelmed? Well, yes, of course, they don't have much headroom, to use their quote, but we know that, and we have known that. That has been the case for almost as long as the NHS has been in existence. Even when it first came out after the Beveridge report, that there were jokes about saying, oh, you're getting new teeth for Christmas, because it had dental coverage as well. And so it was being, even from the very start, overused, or at least used more than it was intended to be used. And now that you've got more people trying to use the NHS and not contribute at all, then you're going to see these types of problems. But Johnson said the law was remaining the same in England, but a smaller Christmas is going to be a safer Christmas, and a shorter Christmas is a safer Christmas. Speaking at a Downing Street press conference, he said the rules allowing 3 households to meet over 5 days were maximums, not targets to aim for. It's always going to be safest to minimise the number of people you meet, he said. After the news conference, the UK, Scottish and Welsh governments issued a joint statement saying this cannot be a normal Christmas, and that they strongly recommend people stay at home. So if you can, stay at home. If you wish to meet with your family, then do so. But also, Johnson also advised people to avoid travelling from high prevalence areas to those with lower rates of coronavirus, and not to stay away from home overnight if possible. So yes, if you're in tier 3, try to not to go down to a tier 1, because they're expecting that even if just 2 households meet, then the R rate will be going above 2. So then each person will be infecting 2 more people. And for the scare graph as well, as they show here, that we see the official COVID-19 deaths. But what does that mean? And then other excess deaths as well, and all other deaths below the kind of what we would be expecting this time of year, considering the previous 5 years. This is not as a proportion of the population, which is always growing. It instead is just a flat figure. So any way that you can try and manipulate the numbers, then obviously do so, and that is what they're trying to do here as well, of course. And the particularly interesting thing, of course, with anything like this, is to say, well, hey, it's because of our action that we flattened the curve and we saw a dip just here, which is what you'd expect from the 5-year average. It dips there, and it is because of what we did that we saw a dip at the end of May, start of June, but again, it's exactly what you would expect based on the 5-year average. So whenever somebody tries to take credit for something that wasn't really their responsibility, then you should always bear these things in mind. And of course, at the start of the year, when we saw deaths below the 5-year average, well, surely it's going to then come up to meet the average, and of course having to go over in order to average out at the same later on, which is exactly what we saw here as well. But Graham Medley, a member of the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies, so SAGE, but who gives a shit about them anymore, said the major driver for how much the disease spread over the Christmas period was the infection prevalence, and that current prevalence had started to rise really quite rapidly in some places. When the rules were made about Christmas, we didn't know what prevalence was going to be, Professor Medley told the Today programme. As for the risk of the NHS becoming overwhelmed, he said, we don't have much headroom. Yes. Even worse, of course, saying that in a joint editorial, the British Medical Journal and Health Service Journal said demand on the NHS was increasing, adding that a new strain of coronavirus had introduced further potential jeopardy. And the worst thing about these new strains is, of course, that it is unlikely that previous vaccinations will be useful or guard against the new strain. What this means is that it's become endemic. It has become seasonal. It will be something that will be with us for the rest of time. So, as we were doing so well with coronary heart disease and cancer, that there is now a new player on the block that seems to be endemic and an annual thing, which reduces life expectancy because it takes people out towards the end of their lives. COVID, most likely, similar to cancer or coronary heart disease. That, of course, there are people who are diagnosed with cancer or CHD earlier on, and there are a few people in their 20s or 30s, or maybe even younger, that die from cancer and CHD. They are not the main victims of these diseases, though, and that is an actual disease, as in a degenerative disease, as in the body not functioning properly, instead of a virus, which they're calling a disease here, but there is actually a slight difference, which is not just down to semantics. But of course, you got to wonder, well, what's happened here then? Because the press was saying before, oh, it's the Grinch that stole Christmas, saying that you can't meet like you would have been able to do before, and so now they said, well, you can have 3 households. They're saying, well, that's too much. You should lock it down. And Labour is, of course, getting involved, with Shadow Health Secretary Jonathan Ashworth said Labour would support tougher restrictions over Christmas. Yes, of course they will back any restrictions that has the government infringe on your life even more, that stops you from having your God-given freedoms. He said, we would have liked to have seen a toughening up today from the Prime Minister, perhaps something like what we've seen in Wales, reducing households. I think he's going to have to go further in the coming days. Which is precisely what you would expect from Labour, and precisely the kind of thing that you should ignore from Labour. An information campaign is expected to be launched in the days running up to Christmas, with people being urged to think carefully before bubbling with elderly or at-risk relatives. Yes, and please do explain to your elderly or at-risk relatives to say, well, hey, here's what we're seeing about COVID. Here's the official stuff which is being pushed. Here's what I found to be true as well. Given what you know, what your options are in terms of treatment, how available that treatment will be with our socialised health system, and the thoughts of vaccinations coming soon, would you like to spend Christmas together, or would you rather be alone? It's up to you. And a lot of older people will, of course, go, well, my life is basically done now. I just exist for my family. And Christmas is a very important time of year, and I would much rather be with my family now, because I don't know how many Christmases I have left, and this could very well be my last one. And if this is how I go out, then fair enough. Because you've also got to remember that the old people tend to be wiser, tend to have lived through a lot more, and tend to have tougher resolve as well. And they know what is important and what is not, and do not really care what other people think of them. In which case, they will make their decisions based on what is important for them, and that will be all. And it really will be that straightforward. But that's about all for me for this one. Just a quick one with some good news to say that the restrictions are not being increased. The bad news is they're staying as they are, and Labour is pushing to try and get its mandate enforced even more than it is already, despite the Conservatives having such an overwhelming majority, as the Tories don't seem to be able to push through anything conservative. But as always, let me know what you guys think down below. Always intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. If you think the government should really step in more, even on conservative values, and good luck reasoning that one. Or if you think, no, by all means, tell us what you think the truth is. Allow us to find out and decide for ourselves, and then we will be responsible for our own actions. Either way, let me know down below. And as always, until next time, have a good one.